everyone. I'm going to come at it from the perspective of the regional ecologist in Northern York when I was there for the last 4 years, 2013 to 2017. So this is what's going to sort of be the focus of my talk. And when I say value add your data, this is small v value add. This is getting it into BDBSA is value adding your data at the first step, or 101. So the business that I had in Northern York was project business or standard regional business for an ecologist. But we had two major biodiversity fund projects that I was working on. There was another one, the Four Rivers project, that the water catchment person was working on, Jen Munro. And with the two big projects I was working on the monitoring, which included what we call goanna monitoring, but it was actually a big fauna grid on Southern York Peninsula of remote cameras, coastal raptor monitoring for ospreys and sea eagles, revegetation success monitoring for all the re-veg work that we were doing, threatened flora monitoring, woodland bird and bush condition monitoring. So that was sort of the major project work that I was doing, and also then just some of the regional work was threatened species monitoring, vital attributes work, weed monitoring, seasonal bird monitoring, camera traps that were being done through the Tama work that Andy was doing, and there was abundant species work, like work on little corellas and kangaroos. And then there was just the general regional opportunistic sighting work. So that's sort of some of the business that we're covering. So in terms of links with BDBSA and how did I feed my data into BDBSA? Well, it was a bit of a cobbled process, I suppose, partly because I was extremely time poor and resource poor, so normal story. So with data capture, there was sort of pre-monitoring work that I put into Excel so that I contained all my information on landowners and sites and everything like that. Then in the field, it was a combination of data sheets, hard copy, as well as GPS sites and bringing that together. And then in the office, it was a combination of Excel, getting everything into the minimum BDBSA spreadsheet, the minimum format spreadsheet, so that then I could actually pass that off to a consultant to do all the formatting to get it into the flow format and get it in. So there's a lot of my time getting the data from hard copy into spreadsheet, but there was also my time setting up spreadsheets for my wonderful volunteers who spent hundreds of hours looking at camera trap data and recording that into my anal spreadsheets, and also grad rangers who provided a bit of extra resource at times. So what hurdles? Well, how high do you have to jump, really? It's the same old usual story I've alluded to, overcommitted projects, lack of time before you're monitoring, lack of time in the field and in the office, and lack of resources in terms of staff and money. So all those things were major hurdles. And there was also, I have to raise this, I think, a lack of recognition of the value, the efficiency and tools that having data in a database, the biological database of SA, provides. So, and that lack of recognition was, I have to say, up the tree. It was management and up. There was probably some lack of recognition at the lower grassroots level, but really, unfortunately, it wasn't well supported in the management. And I think that's still a case that probably is reflected in other areas. So what benefits did having it in BDBSA bring? Well, hopefully those are bearing more fruit now that all the data's in, because it's probably taken 6 to 12 months post-contract to get everything in. But prior to, I'll run through some pictures in a minute. but just I've got some prior to 2014 when we started collecting the data, just a map of some a record there for a species, and then post that data being in that was collected through the monitoring program, and then really district staff hopefully are using the data. Fire management, I know, are using the data for the environmental assets risk assessment. The regional conservation status assessment, I know Sharon needs to use the data. And I know the rewilding translocation plans have needed to use the data. And also where I work now in native vegetation management branch or native vegetation branch, we're using it all the time for assessments, and it's also using BDBSA assessments and things. So just, I don't know whether you can see this tiny point here is the goanna records, the heath goanna records prior to 2014. That was all that was in the database. So now, at least I can say, this is the record.
You've recovered.
Right, not on the road, no. Yeah, so that's just a combination of records that came in from the camera traps, but also a lot from the records that people told me of the sightings they saw, and people like Jazz, who sitting over here, she provided records of sightings that she saw in the area, and lots of other staff, as well as the locals, community, and part of the Goanna Watch project. So that's all come together and got into BDBSA. Things like from the fauna grid, we put in all the fauna sightings seen, and that included things like the fox sightings. So this is all the sightings of foxes from the camera trap grid, which is 70 camera traps across the area, and the cat sightings. And these are sort of important things for the translocation plans for the rewilding work, to look at the threats, what are threats for the fauna species to be introduced. And this gives us a base plate from which, again, future work, like the big fox baiting program that's happening down there, can be assessed against. So what's on my wish list? Well, more resources. More resources for programming and support for the knowledge management group for all the good work that they do. Increased database capacity to get data in, load it, accommodate different sorts of data. Got an awful lot of information that's crammed into comments fields. The capacity to collect data more electronically in the field and get it loaded up, and the ability to update metadata more. And I'm as guilty as anyone about not getting back to update my metadata. There's a check of history of metadata from projects back from 1991 probably. But again, I'd say better recognition of the importance of the data and the need for the data is the backbone of our work, and it really needs support from management and executive, and I would really say that recognition, they need to have a better understanding of how critical it is to our work, especially if they won't let you go out into the field these days. But do you want to know about my data wish list? Well, I'd love to have all the BirdLife Australia data that we've put in. We've put in a lot of data straight into BirdLife Australia through the Northern York bird monitoring programs. And that's project data, but I'd really like to have that data from BirdLife Australia be in BDBSA. And I think there's a few birds that have to be BirdLife Australia want us to jump there, but we need to look into that. The bush condition monitoring data, spent a lot of time getting data into that database through NCS, so it'd be really good to have that. So that's good, that sounds like that's going to happen. Then in the native veg branch, it'd be good to have all the bushland, scattered tree, rangeland assessment data, that's the score sheets that consultants are doing, for all that to go in. Photo point images, and not just images, I think like someone else has raised, it's all the video footage and things like that. It'd be really good to have that in. But I'd really like to have all that hyperlink to the photo points layer that's now in EMB maps, and because, and I know that's potentially complicated, but it's great to have the photo points there in the region, as it won't be a surprise to anyone. There's a high turnover of staff, People don't know where photos are of things that were taken when we put in re-veg or did some coastal protection works. So just being able to show people that there are photo points in that layer in the ENV maps is really helpful, but it'd be even more helpful if you could just hit on that and see the image for the over time too. That's even more. Flora vital attributes, that'd be great to have more of that in. And at a regional level as well as the state level. Of course, camera trap data would be great to have all that data for all species that you see, because you're going to look at the photos once, you might as well collect everything at the same time. And then other things like the bird census, it'd be great to have that completed, because I had my image reviewers use the census information a lot so that they could check things to make sure that they were selecting species that were, the distributions that occurred in that area when they were checking the images. So that was great to be able to link to that in our website, and they could look that up because they're external to the staff, to our department. And yeah, also in ENV maps, it'd be good to have easier recognition of the sources of data. I just recently looked at a roadside vegetation management plan from EP, and it talked about this data that came from the Native Veg Assessments Group, and it was the roadside survey data, and there was no recognition of the roadside survey database or the survey methodology. It was just this information came from the assessments group. So I think that sort of thing, it's really good to be able to pinpoint back to the sources. And then thanks everyone for all your help, and probably named a few people here, but there's many more that have helped in the process to get the data in. So, yeah.